Welcome to the YCNU podcast. Join us each week for engaging conversations with campus leaders, students, faculty, staff, alumni, and community members. From academics to athletics, campus life, and beyond, we cover it all. Have someone you want to hear from? Let us know. Let's explore the world of Yavapai College together.
Hello, I'm Cadu Medina, and I'm here with Elizabeth Peters. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you.
It's good to have you on the podcast. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I want to share a little bit of your story, your accomplishments in a recent award. That is so exciting. But let's start from the top there. Just can you share with us here a little bit of your journey to becoming the lead faculty for electrical instrumentation technology and applied pre-engineering at Yavapai College, and what inspired you to get in this field?
I know it's a mouthful, those programs.
It's a huge name. Just the name itself, it shows how much technology is in what you do. Just give us a little bit of that background there.
Sure. I'm actually a product of the program, of the Electrical and Instrumentation Technology program. So I'm a graduate from Yavapai College.
No way. That is amazing. Cool.
Yeah. Myself and my partner in crime, Cassie Gibson, we're actually both products of the program. So we graduated a year apart, and our mentor actually called us both up separately, about 10 years apart, and said, "Hey, I think you'd be good at this, and it's a chance to give back." So that's how I started, is I was actually a student in the Electrical and Instrumentation Technology program.
Okay.
And then I went out into industry. I spent some time in avionics. So I worked on the communication navigation systems on mostly military aircraft, so things like Blackhawks. And then I got this call, "Hey, I think you'd be good at this.
Yeah.
Come back, start teaching." He was very persuasive because I was actually scared of public speaking when I took this job. So fake it till you make it, I guess. So that's how I started. And then for the applied pre-engineering part, because those are actually two separate programs, the applied pre-engineering program, I actually started teaching the robotics class in that. That was the first thing I started teaching. And then I actually went through and finished my bachelor's in engineering and eventually got my master's. And so that's how I got involved with engineering.
Let me backtrack a little bit here, because you were a student here. What were you doing prior to becoming a student?
I was a bartender.
Okay. Here in the area? You're from the area, right?
Yeah.
And then started Yavapai College, and then from there just started teaching here, and then bachelor's and master's.
Never looked back.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're telling us like a 30, 40 year long history here, but you're not that, you're not that old. You're very young. So
that's about, 18 years.
Okay.
Like that, 15.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Were you in the service? You mentioned there that you worked in the military equipment?
No, I worked on the equipment, but I didn't serve. Cassie did. Cassie's ex-Navy. No, I worked in manufacturing, production, and repair.
Okay.
So the company I worked for, manufactured the radio navigation systems that went in those aircraft. But no, I didn't actually serve.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So in what inspired you to get into this field? Let's just say, like, some people might think, some people might think this is not for a girl. This is a boy's job.
Yes.
So how did you get into the geek world of electronics, instrumentation, and all that good stuff?
So my family, my dad and my brother are both in the field.
Okay.
So I did say mentor, and he is my mentor, but he was also, he's my dad. So my dad actually started the program.
Very cool.
And my brother was actually in the very first graduating class of the Electrical and Instrumentation Technology program. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I got into it. I think I was actually the only girl in my class. And I think Cassie was the only girl in her class.
I love it.
And I think we were probably the only girls in, 5-6 years of that. And we're just stubborn enough to stick with it. But I mean, there was that encouragement from my family. And I come from a long line of geeks. So that's where it started when I was a kid, probably.
Is that what your class looks like nowadays? Is it mostly boys, or that probably has changed significantly, right?
I think we still have majority, but I think it's probably about let's think about my freshmen. I think about a third of my freshman class.
I love it.
Are women. Yeah.
That's super cool. Well, let's just get right into the big news here that we know. I'm so anxious to get into it and learn more about it too. So first of all, congratulations on winning the AACC Faculty Innovation Award. That alone just sounds awesome. Can you tell us what is this award and what does this recognition mean to you? I know you were kind of sharing a little bit that with me that you couldn't believe that happened. So what is it? Why was this such a big deal? And what does it mean to you?
So, so AACC, that's the American Association of Community Colleges. And so that's thousands of community colleges across the nation are part of this organization. And so this isn't a national award. So that was kind of terrifying, actually, when I found out that Dr. Ryan had nominated me. That was in and of itself very cool. I just stick in my own little world and I work with my students and there it is.
Right.
So to even just to get nominated was an honor. That was very cool. And then to be a finalist was really surprising as well. Because again, there's, this is nationwide. Here we are at little old Yavapai College, right? And the other two finalists for the award, I Googled. Right? Who wouldn't? Right. And I Googled, and these other two amazing faculty people were working at, much bigger system, community college systems. They're working on these huge projects, grant-funded projects. One of the individuals is at Miami-Dade, which is the biggest community college district, I believe, in the country. And he was a principal on a grant working with the NSA. These big, huge, splashy sort of things. And here I am, I'm just working with my students. That's what it feels like. So it was, it's a great honor to be recognized.
What were the projects like? Just give us an idea here of what was your project about and what were you up against? Because I'm sure that the AACC, it's a national organization. So it kind of asks all the community colleges across the country to nominate a project for this competition, so someone can be awarded. What kind of projects are we looking at, and what did you present? What was yours?
Well, it really doesn't sound impressive sometimes. So the individual at Miami-Dade, he was working with an NSA grant on getting students into cybersecurity. He was computer science faculty and working with cybersecurity, and then the NSA, and there's a Navy base down there in Florida, and it was this very big project on getting students into cybersecurity. The other individual, if I remember correctly, was in New Jersey, and in the construction technology, might have even been civil engineering, and one of the projects that he had worked on was moving a cemetery.
Oh, wow.
Which is really logistically.
How do you even do that?
There are so many moving parts to that, from federal regulations, state. I think it was a historic cemetery. So you had that. Yeah, it was huge.
Right.
It was a huge project. And it was, he did it with his students.
Okay.
And so getting his students that real life experience was really, really cool. And then there's, what was in the nomination that Dr. Ryan wrote for me had a lot to do with OER. And so at YC, we're big on open educational resources and lowering textbook costs. And what I did a few years ago, I started, when we kind of started the OER project at YC, I went through the 10 core courses for electrical and instrumentation, plus another 4 in the applied pre-engineering program. And I switched them over to no textbooks.
Wow.
It took a while.
How can you do that?
Yeah.
It's not like moving cemeteries, but almost as complicated.
It was a lot of work, but it was, is for my students. I mean, we know from the OER statistics, when you have these really expensive textbooks, and students can't afford them, they just don't get them.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's that. They still take the class.
Right.
But because they don't have the material, they don't do as well.
Right.
And so some of what was in the nomination, the project I worked on, kind of is that it worked. In that my success rates all went up.
Right.
And so the successful completion of all these different courses, all of them went up when we swapped over to free resources. Now, not all of it's, sort of by definition, open educational resources, which those tend to, like, kind of like our internal definition, a lot of it has to do with Creative Commons, like free. And, I can't remember the term right now.
And that's okay.
Public domain. There we go.
Okay. All right.
I got there. Public domain and Creative Commons license. But one of the things that I had to do with a lot of the electronics classes is we do fair use, and we do a lot of fair use. So I use a lot of documents and articles and resources that are actually produced by manufacturers of our equipment. And so if you leave the branding on,
right.
they put it out there. And as long as you leave their, little logo down at the bottom of the page, it's under that fair use clause, because we are, in theory, we could be directing students to using that equipment, which is why they give this stuff away.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I worked on.
That is incredible. I mean, in just think in terms of the impact also, like maybe moving cemeteries is definitely a massive undertaking, but being able to graduate students, have students complete a complicated topic like electrical instrumentation technology, engineering with no textbooks, with available materials. Yeah. I mean, that's huge. Yeah. And successfully complete these courses.
Is the key.
That's the
it
key,
worked.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not just, like grassroots improvising here to get students to get through the course, but they're successfully graduating without these 2,000 pages, textbooks that you used to see, like those heavy, encyclopedia style, walls of books.
Hundreds of dollars a piece sometimes.
Right.
And, we have, so my electronics students, my electrical instrumentation students go through 10 core courses with us. And in theory, that could be 10 $150 textbooks,
right? Which
were going on it used to be like a quarter of the cost of a degree in textbook costs. So to be able to take that, sort of out of the equation, it was a good project.
Yeah.
And we were keeping
incredible.
Up with it because, our tech changes all the time. And so.
Well, and the final piece of my question there was, what does it mean to you? Because there's a lot of work involved, and that's probably like a passion project that you were able to finally see, come to fruition. But not only that, be also recognized and awarded nationally.
Yeah,
how does that feel?
That was pretty wild because the only people I expected to notice were my students. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't really expect that to go anywhere else at the college. I mean, let alone at the national level. So that it's been very humbling. It's been very cool.
I love it. Well, your programs emphasize hands-on, technology-driven instruction. Can you share an example of a innovative project or teaching method here that you've implemented that you are the most excited about? I know this is one, but are there more in the practical side of what you do and what you teach? Is there anything in there that it's a highlight for you?
It's a highlight. Man, we do a lot of pretty cool stuff. One of the things that we do is in the majority of our classes, we have semester-long projects that our students work on. And some of them are structured and we repeat them and there's that. But this past fall, I got to do something very, very different with my intro to engineering class. And that was, we normally do a project based around the principles of value engineering, which gets conflated sometimes with cutting costs. But really what it is improving value. Mm-hmm. And so that's a component of that class. And for the first time, we actually got to work on a real project, not just here's essentially a case study is what we always used to do. This past fall, we actually worked with the tiny homes that our construction guys manufacture. And so we focused on the water system. And seeing my students sort of research and prepare a proposal on the one that I think was most impressive was actually rainwater catch and filtering, which is not something that's really viable for a large home, but for a tiny home. So we might actually get to implement that. And I think that's the coolest piece, is that I had my students working on this actual real life project that we might, like at Chino, I think that's where we were thinking we might actually get to implement what they had designed. So.
Well, this is a perfect segue for my next question here. You've mentioned in the Faculty Innovation Award press release that went out a couple of weeks ago that student success drives your work. How do you prepare your students to meet industry needs, the standards out there that are constantly moving, and it's a constantly chasing target.
Yes,
for,
it is. It
for
is
all
a constantly
of us, right?
moving
Especially
target.
in technology.
Yeah.
How do you prepare them for all these things? Like the tiny home.
That was a cool project.
It is a very cool project. Yeah. Very in the moment. We're extensively talking about this. This is even like there's like TV shows generated about it because it's that much of an important topic. Yeah. How else do you prepare our students for all of the other needs that are out there?
Yeah. So with electrical and instrumentation technology, that's our that is a moving target constantly on keeping up with that, especially because it's not an inexpensive proposition. We can't replace all of our equipment all the time. And so we get kind of creative as best we can. We have technology ranging in that lab from 1968 all the way to brand new as of last year. And so keeping up to date with those technology changes, a lot of it has to do with working with our company partners. We have a really robust advisory board. So we have 11 companies on our advisory board. No, is it 11? I think it's 11.
Wow, nice.
That spans 3 counties. So Yavapai, Coconino, and Maricopa.
Okay.
And so we meet with them once or twice a year, usually twice. And we sit down with them and say, what are you doing? And that's the only way we can really stay up to date in a way that we know will help our students, because we've got these companies that will hire our grads on a pretty regular basis telling us, well, this is what we just changed to. And then we do our very best to follow that.
I love that. Yeah.
One of the recent ones we did, we have robotics as part of the, actually in both programs, pre-engineering and in instrumentation. And we just added a new type of robot, a new manufactured robot, because a couple of our partners actually switched brands, essentially. And robots are sadly very proprietary. They're not always interchangeable. In fact, the programming languages are proprietary. It's a bit annoying.
For competitive reasons, I'm sure, right? So
and they want to keep all their stuff together, and they don't want to necessarily do plug and play with other manufacturers. But so we just got this past year, we just got a brand new robot that we're going to implement.
Do we also have partnerships as far as internships for our students, or even employment opportunities at the end of certifications and all that? Do we go that far in collaborating with these companies?
Yeah, talk about another passion project. I am always trying to expand that. We have the data that shows that our students that get even a part-time internship while they're in the program, by the time they graduate and they start getting those initial offers, they're anywhere from 10 to 20% higher if the student has gone through an internship, even if it was a part-time for one semester.
No doubt.
That real experience really speaks to companies. We do have, I don't know what we're at, 18, 19 years partnership with the copper and gold mine in Baghdad, Arizona. So right now it's owned by Freeport-McMoRan. And that's probably the coolest, most excellent opportunity for our students. The company pays for their entire schooling, pays for any books for, not our stuff, but like the gen eds and stuff.
Right.
Pays for books, pays for tools. And then they get a 20-hour a week part-time job for 2 years. And
how awesome.
It is. Yeah. It's very, very cool. And so we have other partners as well, locally, that will kind of on a case-by-case basis hire my students part-time. We've had partnerships with Print Pack in Prescott Valley, Purina up in Flagstaff, Canyon Arrow Connect here in Prescott, Drake Cement out in Paulden. We've had it with Asarco, which is actually down by Safford. Where else have we've all over the place.
Yeah, it's super cool and crazy. Like I remember recently saw a documentary about how so many German companies have these programs in these partnerships with community colleges, especially universities as well. And they've been doing this for forever, where, students are barely out of, their college or their university, and they're already employed, interning with all these companies. They have guaranteed job placement right after that. And on top of that, the companies are paying for their education so that when they come out, they are, ready to go. I mean, how wonderful is that? And you think that only happens there, right? Oh, that only happens over there. I'm like, no. It happens here too. So we're there. Yeah.
I mean, that's, if I could get more companies on board and do that for every single one of my students, I'd do it in a heartbeat. But it takes a little bit of convincing with companies to invest in somebody that they've never met, or to, open their doors to somebody. Now, these students do get hired. They are paid internships. That's one of the things that we're really, really passionate about, is gone are the days of unpaid internships. As far as I'm concerned, that's just kind of cruel to ask a student to work for free for 20 hours a week.
Hallelujah.
So, they might not get paid, a lot, they may be making 18,
right,
maybe 20 an hour, but it's in the right field.
Exactly. It's experience, they're getting paid, which can help them with their student costs.
And it's those initial offers coming out of, when they're about to graduate, we will see sometimes a really significant difference. Like I said, anywhere from 10 to 20% for my students that don't do an internship versus my students that do. The other thing that we're really, really proud of in that program is we do have 100% placement. I've never had a student
100% placement.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that predates me as well. So that's about 20 years, or 19, something like that, 18, 19 years. In fact, my graduating class, I think all of them, except for maybe one, have multiple offers already. And so they just walked on Sunday, which is always a blast to see that.
Yeah, that was incredible. I was there too. And we had, a total of
1,200.
1,200.
It's
a
great.
Huge number.
Yeah.
I think we had 1,000 and some certificates out of that, right?
Yeah. And so some of my students get the certificates. A lot of them get degrees, because mine is one of the few fields in, like at CTech, where a degree does actually make a difference in what your initial offer is. But yeah.
Love it. Get hired education. That's what we're offering.
The tagline. I love that tagline.
Let's I want to talk about a couple of other projects that you're working on here. You're currently also working on some exciting projects like the virtual twins and robotics lab expansion. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about that, about these projects and their impact, where we're going with this, why we're working on this stuff?
Yeah. The virtual twin, actually turned out to be a much bigger project than we thought it was going to be, because it actually is going across more than just our program. So I spent most of about a year and a half ago, I started the research on finding a partner. Originally, I thought it would be more like the kind of VR that you use with a headset.
Okay.
But we ended up doing kind of a computer-based. And what it is it's a digital interactive copy of our lab and all of the trainers that go with it. So we don't buy educational trainers. We build our own. So we design and build ours, and we use real equipment. That's the number one reason, is because a lot of the educational trainers out there use like approximations.
Sure.
And so we don't want to do that. We want our students to have access and experience with the actual stuff they're going to see in the field.
Same environment as if they were here in the class.
So we use all industrial grade equipment, whether it's our test equipment or the stuff they're actually working on. And so we make our own trainers. And this project is making these digital copies. And I found a software platform that allows me to actually bring the real industrial copies of these, like I'm trying to think of the one I've been working on recently, is the first one we're going to hope to complete soon, is our programmable logic controllers, and our PLCs are industrial microcomputers. So that's basically what they are. Mm-hmm. And this software platform, because it's also used by industry, they actually have functional copies of that digitally. Oh, and so we can basically like import them and then piece together our trainers. Now, the cool part about this for our students is now they're going to have access through the YC Cloud to go in and actually practice on the virtual copies before they come in and actually do it with, hands-on. Excellent. And so we're not replacing anything. Right. We're adding the extra practice
giving more access to it.
The few times that we've had like lab aids where we could open our lab, not 24/7, but more than, what myself and Cassie have the bandwidth for. When we give students the opportunity to spend more time on the equipment, they do better, right? That just makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so this is a way for the students to work on it anytime they have the chance, from the comfort of their couch is the idea.
Wherever they are.
Yep. And it functions just like our actual equipment. Like it won't like actually blow up or anything, but it'll throw errors and tell you like, nope, that didn't work. It'll actually break the pieces, which is very cool. And so everything in the electronics lab, almost everything in the electronics lab, we're going to make copies of. That's what we've been working on. And then the cool thing is that the same software platform is being used over in advanced manufacturing as well. And so Eli Humes, who's the lead faculty over in advanced manufacturing, he's been working with the same software platform to copy his hydraulics and pneumatics trainers. A lot of things here is cross-functional. And so my students have to take those classes as well as the advanced manufacturing, the automated industrial technology students all take those classes. And he's been working on his stuff as well in the same software platform. So he's going to have virtual twins of some of the stuff in his lab. We're very excited that we were able to kind of expand that past our little department.
Incredible. Yeah. Is this already available to students or it's in the process?
It's the students can actually access it. Already on the virtual through the cloud or actually on any of our lab computers, just like any other software.
I love the name too, virtual twin. Yeah. It's like you can do it here in person or you can take it home and continue your studies there. And robotics lab expansion. I mean, I just took a quick little tour around it's just incredible. The amount of robotics that you have in there.
That we have crammed in that space. Yeah. So we are excited because some of it is we're just getting physically more room to maneuver. Sure. You might have noticed we've got robots on carts that are kind of crammed in corners.
Yeah, it's hard to work around those things. You have to create more space.
Yeah, right now we actually I've ended up pulling those into the hallways and stuff like that. Where luckily the little ones, the blue and silver ones, are collaborative robots. They're meant to work with people. They have sensors in them, so if they run into you, they stop. Those ones we have on carts and we can move them around, but the other one's the big yellow ones. And then there's that when you first walk in, that big white one, which is our new one. That's our brand new one, KUKA. We're excited to add that to our program. So the space is going to allow us to expand. It's going to allow us to add some material. We have probably couldn't see it, but in the back of one corner, we actually have an entire integrated manufacturing cell. And that's really hard to get students around because it's literally in the corner. And so we're going to bring that out. We're going to be able to use that more. And then this is hopefully going to give us the chance to also expand some of the stuff we offer robotics wise. And so I used to teach a class on robot vision, machine vision, and there wasn't really a lot of demand on it. I think it was a little bit not enough companies locally were using it. So we kind of shelved it and we went, we'll come back to that. Well, now there are enough companies locally using machine vision to do inspection and error finding and sorting. Right. And stuff like that. So I'm hoping that in the next year or so that I can actually bring that back and update it to the modern what they're actually using in the industry.
Love it. Well, expansion is a good this is the perfect time for that. I was reading something recently here as well about how we, for the past many years, couple decades here, we've been creating opportunities and really graduating a lot of business people. And we immensely lack engineers in this world, right? Does that, you relate to that?
Engineers and technicians.
And technicians. So it's definitely like a need that we need to fill. We are right there, experiencing this right now. And I'm assuming that all this expansion is part of our plan to grow. And we're probably seeing more and more students, hopefully, coming through the program.
Yeah, actually, this past year is the first time we've ever run 2 cohorts of freshmen. So the program actually doubled in size.
Goodness, cool.
This past September. So that was new.
Yeah.
And that demand. And actually, I remember talking back in August and September to all these students. I'm like, where did you come from? Like where?
Yeah.
Like
where were you?
Yeah. So where did you come from? Because we didn't do a big marketing campaign. We were just here. Like normal. And we just saw the program double. And I remember having a conversation with a few of my students, and they had actually Googled AI proof careers and had come up with automation technicians. Because while we use AI and we use machine vision and we use all that kind of stuff, somebody's still got to fix it for now.
Yeah.
And that's my guys.
Absolutely.
So
that's the
expansion is
generically speaking, is the lack. We invested so much time in the business side of things, and we absolutely somewhat neglected the people that create these things that are going to be sold, implemented, developed later on. Hence the need for engineers, technicians, people that can actually hands-on
do the stuff,
create these, new technologies, the new things, like how to move a cemetery. How do you do that? You need machines. Where are the machines? Well, they need to be built by engineers.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where we're at. I love it. All right. Well, we kind of talked a little bit about partnerships with companies here in town and in our community, but can you maybe give me a little bit more information here on what roles these partnerships with companies and universities play in shaping these programs? What else besides the partnership where we get their equipment, some training, some books, and sometimes in partnerships like internships and all that? Is there anything else that goes on there that helps really kind of shape our...
I think, going back to the advisory board meetings, it's really important to us to have these companies come and look at what we have and tell us what they have. That really is how we keep track of what's going on right now. So that's a big piece to it. And then, yes, the internships. And so that's on the electrical and instrumentation side. The applied pre-engineering side, so working with the university partners, because that is an associate's at Yavapai College, but it's a transfer degree. For the most part, you don't become an engineer without a 4-year degree. That's still a standard. And so I'm the articulation point person for YC for engineering. Okay. And so annually I go to the articulation task force meeting. Doesn't that sound spiffy? I love that name for the state of Arizona. And so it's for every discipline really that you have at the universities. Right. There's one of these articulation meetings every year. And so I go to the engineering one and I get to listen to what NAU is doing and what ASU is doing and U of A. And that changes things. So actually this past year, I redesigned the applied pre-engineering program. And we did some different things. We're going to have like an electives block so students can kind of customize a little bit more. I increased the number of transferable classes. I worked pretty hard. It doesn't sound impressive, but I'm really excited that I got 2 classes to transfer to all 3 state universities. In some disciplines, that's not a big deal. Engineering, you imagine like the sports feuds between ASU and U of A. Engineering is way worse. They won't even take some of each other's classes. So getting things to articulate with them is a challenge.
Why is that? Is it because we don't have a common curriculum or like a standard on what needs to be learned before you transfer?
Yeah.
And don't they usually kind of help you or help us figure that out? Like what are some of the requirements and, some of the basics, foundational, classes that these students have to take before they transfer?
And so, yes, and there is supposed to be a standard. There is something across the state of Arizona where we can say, all right, all incoming engineering students need this stuff. For the most part, it's math and science. It's the only thing everybody can really agree on.
STEM,
Yeah, it's literally the calc classes, physics, and actually like they won't even agree on chemistry anymore. And some of it's the difference in philosophy between those universities. But I did get 2 new classes to articulate with all 3 universities. And so that's exciting because our students then have more transfer credits. They don't have to take as many classes at the university. And so it's that piece. We also get to travel. So I also get to see what the other community colleges are doing in their pre-engineering programs. We're actually, Yavapai College is hosting this year. So in September, the universities and the community colleges with engineering programs will be coming here.
Cool.
Yes, to see what we're doing. And so that's a really important piece because I want my students to be able to transfer as successfully as possible. One of the other things that we know helps students at YC is the hands-on piece to get their hands on it. In fact, we just had CTED orientation last night, and I was talking with those brand new students about some of the points of the applied pre-engineering program. And the reason we use the word applied is it gets people excited. But my goal, especially with those high school students, is to help them figure out if they even want to be an engineer. Because a lot of people have this picture of Tony Stark in their mind, and I have to break the bad news to them that unless you're independently wealthy, that's not going to happen.
Maybe one of you.
Yes. So helping them figure out if they want to do engineering and then the discipline. ASU has over 20 engineering disciplines. And there's not a whole lot of overlap except the math and the physics.
Okay.
And that's about the only thing that overlaps. None of the engineering stuff really does. So helping them figure that out. The other thing we know is because we help our students figure out, A, do they want to be an engineer? And then B, what kind of engineer do they want to be? We have a much higher retention rate at the university. So that's something that the universities track for us for the community colleges is of all the students from Yavapai College that transfer to ASU, U of A, NAU, in engineering, what's the retention rate? So what's the success rate in their first year? And ours is in the high 80s, low 90s.
Oh, that's incredible.
Annually, yeah.
Wow.
And it used to be that the universities took great pleasure in telling us that, the retention rate was 20%, across all community colleges. So, and we
meaning like you need to do a better job. Your students are not qualified.
Yeah. Well, and they also kind of used it as a marketing thing to say, skip the community college.
Oh gosh. Yes.
Yeah. So we're glad that that's shifting a little bit. We are, YC is, as far as retention for engineering students at the universities, we're above average for the community colleges. Cool. So
what portion of our cohort ends up transferring to universities? And,
so the majority of our applied pre-engineering students do transfer. The majority do. Because there's not as many opportunities for them as engineers coming out with just an associate's. It really is one of those fields where they still expect you to have a 4-year degree, which is kind of sad. And so some of our students do stay, for example, local. Maybe they go into engineering technology, which is kind of that bridge between the technicians and the actual engineers. But most of the engineering students do transfer. Almost none, if any, of my instrumentation students transfer because that is, I don't really like the term terminal because it sounds really bad. But that would
sounds
be
like a curse. Come on.
Yeah, terminal degree.
Yeah, no.
It also makes it sound like you can't go anywhere. Right.
You can't do anything else past that point.
Yeah. So my electrical and instrumentation students, they do stop at 2 years because that's all they need. They don't need to go on to a university. So there's no need to transfer. The only reason any of my E&I guys go back to school go to the university is because they either want to go into management or they want to go into engineering. There's really no other need to, if they want career advancement, it's just a matter of sticking with it, and getting better.
But right out of community college, absolutely employable.
Oh, yeah.
100% of them.
Yeah. And in fact, they make more than my baby engineers. So like when my students transfer to university and they come out with their 4-year degree, the average salary for a brand new engineer is significantly lower than the average salary starting for my technician students.
Right. Which is another thing, you know, I've always had this conversation, especially with some of my friends and their children, that time in our lives when we had to wait until you graduate college, maybe even after you get a master's, that's when you look for a job and that's when you start your work career. No longer doable that way, right?
No, you really...
you need a head start. And what better head start than come out with an associate's or a couple of years of training with internships and all of that. Start working.
Yeah.
And then decide, like you said, do I even like engineering? Is that a direction I want to pursue? If it is, great. Then go to college.
Yeah.
Finish your years, you know, and get your master's and do whatever else you want to do that. But do that while you're working.
Yeah. And for pre-engineering, we've also got the CTED partnership, which is really cool because they don't even leave high school before they figure that out. The other nice thing about the pre-engineering program and the applied piece of it is that...
Yeah, airplane going right over us. We're right next door to the airport, which, by the way, we have a phenomenal aviation program as well that moved out of the CTEC campus here, right? But
to Prescott.
Started here. Anyways, there's a tangent.
To the applied piece of the applied pre-engineering program, the other thing that it allows students to do, so we want to find out if they want to be an engineer, and if they do, what discipline. If they don't want to be an engineer, they still come out with skills. And so the program is designed that they actually come out with industry certification, even though it's a transfer program.
Absolutely.
So they do take robotics, they take some electrical classes, they take some CNC machining classes. And so if they don't like engineering, they can still go get a job.
Do something else with it. That's fantastic. Well, we're getting to the end of our interview here, and I really appreciate all the details. You are awesome to talk to. I just love what you're doing, and it's so exciting, you know, that all of that is happening, and this is just the beginning. The award is not terminal.
I do hate that term.
You have plenty going on and so much. So many innovations and awesome things that you're working on. But let's finish this here with a little bit of an advice here, right? Okay. With your leadership roles and community involvement, which are all over the place, I know that. What advice would you give to educators aiming to foster innovation and student success in STEM? The big word is STEM, right?
STEM,
like there's so many teachers and professors nowadays just struggling with how do I make an impact in my student's life?
I think one of the big pieces is don't stay insulated. You got to keep up with what you're doing. And, you know, certainly building relationships with the companies that hopefully will hire your people, you know, whatever that looks like, and staying up to date with how fast everything is changing. It can be a little overwhelming sometimes to look at how fast everything is changing. I mean, what was it, 2021, 2022 when ChatGPT kind of came about, and now it's like everybody, generative AI, I know what that is. So staying up to date on what the industry is doing and how that's changing is one big piece. The other thing that we know works for our students and for increasing student success is, as trite as it may sound, but it's building the relationships. I spend 2 years with my technician students, and it's hard not to get attached to them. And they form these kind of natural cohorts as they're going through their coursework. Our program is small enough, they only have one option, really. They have to be in the same classes together. And so fostering that is really important, I think, to student success, is to know that they're not by themselves. You know, we talk a lot, we have so many wonderful programs at YC about various insecurities, whether it's housing insecurity or food insecurity. And that is the number one reason I lose students. It's not the academics. It's the money. It's my kid got sick, or my car broke, or I got evicted. That is 100% the number one reason I lose students is life happens. And so giving them a little bit of a life jacket or life raft. We spend a lot of time with our students and making those connections, and it makes a difference. So I guess it's kind of two parts: student success, acknowledging that they're people. They're not students first; they're people first. And then as far as like the STEM piece, I really can't stress enough that you can't just keep doing what you're doing. We rewrite our curriculum. I think I'm confident to say annually. We're adding things, we're taking things out, we're updating things. I don't think I've ever left a course alone from semester to semester. In fact, it's kind of a running joke. Cassie and Eli make fun of me for it all the time. They're like, "You changed it again, didn't you?" Yes, I did. So yeah, the only way to stay relevant is to stay up to date.
To improve it, right? Yeah. Well, I love it. I think that all the accolades that you get are well-deserved.
Thank you.
are incredible. You've been doing wonderful things. And I think your students are, their success stories are probably the best.
Oh, that's the best part of everything I do.
The best way to look at this win, right?
Yeah,
it's how they're doing out there. That's reflective of all you're doing in your team and the whole CTEC and all our faculty and Yavapai College in general.
My favorite thing in the world is that phone call or that email a year or two later saying, "Hey, you'll never believe what I'm doing now." And that's really cool.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Was there one phone call in particular you want to share here with us? I'm sure you get a lot of those. Is there a cool student story you want to share?
I think I had a student a few years ago. He actually graduated during COVID. So he finished, spring of 2020. That was a rough year. And he finished, and he had been doing an internship prior to that. The company actually folded. He got kind of actually, in fact, they were flying them around, and he was doing setups at various places, and the company folded like in a matter of 48 hours. Right. And he got stuck in I think it was Kansas City. And, we got him back, and we got him into a different internship, and, he made it through that. He's down at Intel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's one of the instrumentation technicians at Intel, so manufacturing the semiconductors and microchips and stuff like that. And so, and then a couple years after that, we actually got him onto our advisory board, and so I get to see him every year, and he's going up and up and up, and so that's a really good one. I want to say one of my other ones, there's a company in Prescott Valley called Print Pack. They are an automated printing press. So if you've ever been to Trader Joe's and bought a bag of pre-mixed salad, those bags are actually made in Prescott Valley.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's a weird one. I know. And I had 2 interns actually at Print Pack, and watching them over the last 6, 7, 8 years has been really fantastic now, because one of them is a process engineer and the other is the supervisor over all of the technicians at that plant.
Cool.
And so 75% of that department are actually my grads. And so it's that kind of continuous relationship that's really, really cool. Yeah.
It's a big source of pride.
Yes. Yeah, that's the best part. That's the best
cool.
part is hearing from my students after the fact.
Yeah, our ever-growing Yavapai College community, right? Out there, showing up and representing. I love it. Well, Liz, thank you very much. Yeah. Not just for sharing all the stories here with us and taking the time to really talk about your work here at Yavapai College. I really appreciate that. But also thank you for continuing to be such an inspiration for all of us here in the Yavapai College community on, how to continue to carry the torch. I love what you do. You're so inspiring.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to the YCNU podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation today. Don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got someone in mind for our next chat? Reach out and let us know. Until next time, keep exploring, and we'll see you next week.